Alright, without further ado, we'd like to start this evening off. I'd like to introduce a speaker who is absolutely exceptional. 32 years ago, in 1981, he has created MySQL. He was the founder and creator of MySQL. It is now 32 years later, and 60% of the code base is still written by him. That's 16? 60. Sorry, New York accent. I've been saying 60. I can't pronounce it any better than that. 60% of the code base is still written by Monty in MariaDB, in MySQL. Actually, you know what, guys? Come on, a round of applause for that. In addition to MySQL, he's also the CTO of MariaDB and the CEO and founder of Monty Program, which manages the MariaDB Project. Please welcome Monty Widenius. Oh, I did. Okay. I have an idea. Very good point. I did forget to give out the bags. Leave them there for now. First 3 people who checks in to go chat on databasemonth.com. Before we start QA, they'll get these bag of black licorice money things? Turkish pepper. Okay, so make your own black vodka.
Yeah, so nice to be here. Hope you can all hear me. I didn't actually notice that we have a presentation here, so a little bit unprepared, but that's life. So introducing Maria. So this is a picture I choose to represent MariaDB. Not because of the gun in any way, but just because to show that we are confident to handle anything. And I think that this picture kind of shows confidence. And I showed it in about 20 different conferences. Good reception everywhere, except in last time in US when somebody said that you shouldn't show a picture with a daughter with a gun. And then I especially said like now that I didn't choose it for the gun. So I'm sorry if somebody gets offended, but forget the gun and look at the glove. Anything. So here's what I have planned to talk about. I'm free to talk about anything. Actually, I like questions in the middle. So if there's something that you don't understand, you think I should make more clear, just ask me in the middle. I'm not a talker. I really like to sit home, program, do something advanced, work with the community, help people. So I do these talks just because people ask me and I have a hard time saying no when people ask me nicely. So MariaDB was created. So when Oracle announced that they was about to buy Sun, which was something that I never could have expected, I didn't want that the project that I've been working on for 32 years would just disappear. And I was fortunate. Sun had paid me some part of the money, and I put a lot of that money into creating a company, hiring all the core engineers I could, which were basically all except a couple, and work together in a company that was owned by the developers who joined. And so I did this both for the product and for the people that I worked with for a real long time, good friends, and I want to set up something that could be a workplace for life. Because the only way an open source project dies is if you lose the engineers. And thanks to Sun and thanks to the people joining us, we're pretty confident that we can keep on with Maria forever, in spite of what Sun Oracle is doing. Oracle continues good with MySQL, everything is good. If not, we are ready to take over and continue like Oracle in exist. We are not worried about that. So there were some questions about how many people are using MySQL. So how many are using MariaDB? So that's about 5%. So let's try to change that. And not because we did a bad job with MySQL, I think just we have done a better job with MariaDB. And we are also here to secure the future. and everybody is concerned about the future. Not only about what happened in MySQL and MariaDB, but the whole thing about SQL, NoSQL, where should you put your resources on. And my job is to convince you that MariaDB is the future and there's no reason to use MySQL anymore. So, what we are a subset, a superset of MySQL, but more importantly, a drop-in replacement, and a true drop-in replacement. Anybody who uses MariaDB here can attest to the fact that it takes just 20 seconds, 30 seconds to replace MySQL with MariaDB. Everything works, and usually better. In most cases, much better. We have done everything we can to keep things compatible, and all the extensions we have done is done in such a way it shouldn't interfere. Of course, when you do something optimized, there's always a small chance that some queries will be slower, even if 99% of the queries will be much faster. Of course, you have the same problem if you go to MySQL 5.6. But the main thing is that the same people who created MySQL, all the main people are working on MariaDB. And I'm happy that we have gone back to the open development, because that's something that we lost in MySQL when we got investors. Then we hired so many more engineers that I couldn't work with the community anymore and look at the passive reviews. I didn't have time. So I switched to work with people inside of MySQL. And the whole plan was that we should create an open source department that should work with the community. The problem was that the management in MySQL thought that we don't need that. The community can handle it themselves. And it took me 6 years in MySQL until we actually created somebody who would work with the community. And that happened just a couple of years before Sun, but it never really started to get the patches in. So what we have done with MariaDB, we're going back to the roots, we're working very actively with the community. And now we have some major new vendors who actually adding patches to MariaDB and working closely with. We have first was Taobao, who is helping us with replication. They were one who did the first version of multi-source replication that we have added at 0, which I then took and refined and made it to be part of the product. And Google has officially announced that they will base all their future development on MariaDB. And they will start to commit patches to MariaDB. So we are back to that. Anybody can get right access to our bazaar trees as long as you follow the rules and you're doing good code that is accepted by the rest of the people who are commit access. So we are true fork, not just a patch set on MySQL, which means that every month we merge code from MySQL. We could take it to MariaDB. We review everything. We have to decode about 10% because there are issues with the code, because the Oracle has unfortunately lost the know-how of big parts of the code. I think they only know about some, in the DB they know perfectly some parts of the application they can handle, all the middle part of the code and all the glues. The knowledge is gone and they don't have anybody to ask. They refuse to ask our team. So when they introduce something, they also introduce bugs. Not because they're bad developers, but if you don't know the code, you do mistakes. So we review everything, fix those, add those. We add test cases because Oracle doesn't publish test cases anymore for many of the new things that they do in 5.5. They have internal told other people they do it just to make life harder for us, which is stupid because they also hurt the community. But we have the best people, so we can recreate those and we do for things that make sense. But what we have, as there are more plugins, more features, we are, in many areas, we are notable faster, we have better code quality, we have 30 man-years of more development in MariaDB than MySQL has, just because we take the MySQL code and add hours and then the best people do it. And we do always with GPL, both because we want to, and the other thing is that we don't have a choice because of basic code in MySQL. But I think that's a good thing in this case. So during the last 4 years, We have done 4 releases and working on the 5th. And we do basically 1 release a year. I would like to have try to target the release each 9 months, and then because of different issues they tend to slip a couple of months. So you basically get a release a year. And we are a little bit late with MariaDB 10.0 because we are working on one piece that we thought is so important and that we want to delay the release just because of that, and we'll come to that later. And how many here are using Galera? How many know about Galera? So we have that as a piece of MariaDB. It's a different download just because they have done some changes in the code that you don't want to do in the GA. But it's a true multi-master MariaDB MySQL cluster, and you can update any master and it synchronizes itself. And some people see that as a holy grail in solving things. It doesn't solve everything, especially if you want to have really massive amount of masters. It handles up to some 10, 50 masters. Some people say that work even more, but I'm not sure about that. But at least a lot of people are really, really enthusiastic about it, and it seems to work very good. And we are working very closely with them.
Yeah, I was going to ask, you're working very closely with Galera on that, or you're part of the Galera project?
No, so what we have is that the Galera team, they do first patch the MySQL community server with latest Galera, and then they immediately take those changes and apply them to MariaDB. If they have any issues, we will work with them to solve those. We do lots of QA. We are probably, or the users who does most QA or anything to do with Galera, and then we give feedback, and then we help them fix it. So we are mostly the QA process and helping them merge things into MariaDB. But basically, for each release for Galera, the MariaDB release will come very, very soon afterwards. And Galera people is also in Finland, so we meet very, very regularly.
Okay.
So the releases in MariaDB are that the 5.1, it took us about 9 months to do, and the reason was that, not intentionally, but something happens, was that the build system in MySQL was never done in bit open source. We always had a plan, we should publish it. The thing is that sometimes we don't think about it, that we should publish it someday, but some decisions just get delayed because when you publish something as open source, you also need to maintain it. And the person who wrote a build system didn't have time to maintain it. But the end result was it was actually pretty hard to take MySQL and do open source distribution with lots of support for lots of platforms. So we wrote ourselves, everything is open source. So if someone was nowadays to take a fork of MySQL or fork of MariaDB and start doing something yourself, now you can do that trivially because all the infrastructure exists, everything is open source. We have also started to work on free documentation. We have greatly extended test system, and we also looked at all the storage engine that exists that was never part of MySQL. We added that, and that was kind of 5.1. It took us 9 months to do. And at the same time, we did work on 5.2 and took all the big patches that was out in the community that never had got attention in MySQL. And people had submitted patches because we didn't have a system in MySQL. They were never accepted, never worked with. So we took virtual columns, extended user statistics, and the better key cache for MyISAM, added those to 5.2 and some more. So that was kind of the community releases. And just to show that we actually want to work with the community. And we got great response from the community that there's lots of patches that goes into MariaDB. Basically, every second week we get something that we add. And when we were working with 5.2, we also had the optimizer team working on 5.3 because the full optimizer team, everybody who ever had worked a long time on the optimizer had moved to MariaDB. So what they did was that they took all the code that they had done in MySQL 6.0 that Oracle did promise to the EU that they would release. Apparently they never tried to do that, but still the code was there. And these guys had worked on that for 3 years before. So they took that code, added 3 years more work on it, and that basically my MariaDB 5.3. And if you look at MySQL 5.6, what the MySQL 5.6 is from the optimizer point of view is the code that is in 6.0, part of that backported to MySQL 5.6, but not any extension work, not a lot of bug fixes. So that's kind of why the optimizer is so much better in MariaDB and have so many more features. I will show that a little bit. At the same time, we started to get requests from customers of adding new features to MariaDB. And the plan was always that when we work with MariaDB, how would we earn money? Because we couldn't do a dual licensing anymore. And for the open source project, so much of your effort goes to work with the community, doing build QAs, that you need to get it paid somehow. In MySQL time, we managed that with dual licensing. In MariaDB, we couldn't do that. We have to do that as paid for project. And we kind of noticed that it works to some limit. But you can't today create a project as big as MariaDB and just work with services. It doesn't work. And I will come to how we fix that in a couple of minutes. But we also added faster handlers and better replication. And then MariaDB 5.5 was basically MySQL 5.5 merged with 5.3. So this slide is actually not that good because MariaDB 5.5 is actually much more, so I will jump over this. Because I will actually come to that in more detail later. Sorry about that. I should actually remove that slide. Because the thing is that we have so much more features in 5.5 than MySQL 5.5, so this slide doesn't do it justice. So we are working with 10.0. That's the main release we are working on now. And we have some issues with 5.6 because in my opinion 5.6 is still alpha code. It shouldn't have been released in 6 months yet. And I have good reasons for that. If someone wants to know about that, you can ask about that in the Q&A session. But anyway, some features are really good in 5.6. In the DB, it's really good. The performance schema, the online alter table is something that we really want to have. So what we decided to do is that let's take those features that are good, add that to 10.0. Those that we don't like or that are done wrong, we re-implement and do in much better way. One good example is the global transaction ID that is much more advanced in MariaDB and actually solves the issue. And also parallel application, because the way that the parallel application is working in 5.6, I don't believe that's workable for most of the users. And we'll be able to do something within the next 4 months that will be totally more advanced than anything that MySQL has ever planned to do. So the new features that is not in MySQL is that we have a show explain. It shows you what this running query is doing, or actually display of a running query. Then in multi-source, how many have wanted to have multi-source for a long time? Basically, where you have lots of masters and you want a slave that you pull in from all of those. Not that? Only a few? I think that actually is a kind of a killer feature. And, what was kind of annoying was that I was the customer who wanted us to do that about 5 months ago. And I took that as a project that I should do, and then I was starting to work with LinkedIn to also have solved that. And then somebody pointed me out to that Taobao actually have a patch for it. And I thought that I will look to it because this should be maybe one, in the worst case, 2-month project, because everybody in MySQL time has told me that this is a hard thing to do. So then I looked at the Taobao patch and noticed that they had come up with a way to do this with very little code really elegantly and solve the issue. So I did contact the engineer who had done this, and took the code, reworked that in 5 days and had it working. And then clean up with 4 more days. So basically 1 week of work and we got a feature that in MySQL time people just said it's too hard, too expensive to do. It's kind of nice to see that you have the benefit of community who can come up with ways to do things simpler than you could yourself. And that's, I believe, is the strength for MySQL. That's why we're trying to work closely with Google and others to get their insight into solving problems that they know better than we do. We can fix the code, but sometimes we have to get the path. So we have even a faster group commit than we have in 5.3. I have a couple of slides about that. We have the Cassandra, if somebody will know about that. And we also have a level DB in the works, the kind of works. And we have really great storage engine Connect that I will touch on in a couple of screens. TokuDB, how many knows about TokuDB? How many has tried TokuDB? Okay, even less. So in the next release, hopefully next week, you should have MariaDB release with TokuDB. We have made him a patch for that a couple of days ago because we want to use the advanced features in MariaDB to communicate with TokuDB, and we are kind of arguing how we should do this patch. But we should have it very soon. We also have much more statistics like thread memory, and you can also now see that exactly how much memory is MariaDB using internally from the malloc area, which is kind of some people have wanted a long time ago. So these slides will be available for anybody who wants those, but you don't have to read about the details. It's just to show that what the optimizer team has been doing. In MariaDB 5.3, 5.5, there are lots of features. MySQL 5.6, we have some of those. MySQL 5.5 have none of those. And the only new feature that was added to MySQL 5.6 was orderable limit that we added in this. And here the table continues. So we just show that we have done a lot of work, and each of those features is actually, most of them is several months of work. How many using my ISAN for anything here? Still some. The read is really good, but if you want something that is really easily movable between systems, and or you want to have a really small storage area, my ISAN still has it used, and we had a patch from a user that fixed the biggest problem with my ISAN, that it has a block of only one mutex on key cache. We added that, and we get some kind of 20-50% performance on that. So we try to also care about all users. And here's shows you that we have some optimization, like batch key access, that by giving it more memory, you can get things faster. So by extending the memory, that basically you can get 3 instead of 10 speed up with it. And here we have a couple example query. So the thing is that if you have some query that is slower, you actually have more ways to improve the speed up than you have in MySQL. So how many use MySQL 5.5 here? And okay, so we have some more hands in MySQL. So okay, 5.1. Okay, only a few, and 5.5 and 5.6. Okay, no, so what are you the rest of using? Because there are lots of more hands. About double the amount of hands that you use in MySQL. 3.23. Actually, there's still people who are using 3.23. 4.0.
You don't look at it anymore. They always have updates. You just stop keeping track.
Yeah. But anyway, so the thing is that this was basically this graph published by Mark Callahan at Facebook was the reason many people switched to MariaDB, because there was a bug in InnoDB that it works really, really good, and you can group commits together. except if you add replication. And most people add replication, in which case, basically it stops scaling at all. So Facebook tried to fix this, and this is the red line, and then they asked us, so can we do it better? And Christian Nielsen did this, the blue line. Basically shows that you can get 5 times speed up if you are using MySQL 5.5 just by switching to MariaDB, assuming that you have a master that gets lots of writes. No change to whatsoever, 5 times speed up. So this graph is basically the one that got MariaDB famous and showing that you were doing it. Because optimizer and stuff, that's depending on your query. This just works for anyone who has lots of writes. In MySQL 5.6, they have tried to do the same thing, and they were kind of interesting that they had no plans to do that, but 2 or 3 days after this graph was published, somebody in Oracle made a blog post that we will have group commit in 5.6. The problem was that they also announced a plan how to do it. We just concluded that the MariaDB team, this will never work. And what they did in the end, they basically copied Christian Nielsen design in MySQL 5.6. But in 10.0, so this is how MySQL 5.6 scales, and in MariaDB 10.0, we did even faster group commit. So it's not as big difference like this one, but still we are a little bit faster even for the future. And the interesting thing is that the MySQL 5.6 code doesn't work yet. If you're using group commit, it's not enabled by default like in MariaDB, and if you enable it, at least the last version I was looking at still has so many bugs that sooner or later you get a crash. So don't enable group commit if you're using 5.6. Better to go back to my MariaDB 5.5 or wait for 10.0. So Oracle also changed things which I was not happy with, but I kind of expected that they changed MySQL from being open source to open core. And they added the thread pool to MySQL Enterprise version. But we has publicly promised the MariaDB team that any feature that is important that Oracle announced that they will do closed source, we will try to do open source version too, and thread pool was kind of the first big one. And here you can see MariaDB, if you don't use the thread pool, and then you use the thread pool. The interesting thing is that what we did is that you can use both at the same time. So the idea with the thread pool is that if you have lots of cores and you span up a couple of thousand threads, what happens is that the CPU will spend all time in doing thread switching instead of doing query. And that's just how Linux and most other operating systems are designed. So what you can do is, with MariaDB or MySQL Enterprise, if you have also money, you can take, say that, let only have 30 threads handle all the queries. So you have a pool who takes one query, handles it, and you never get more than 30 queries running at the same time. If you have lots of fast queries, it's much more efficient just because you don't get any thread switching. But the problem is that if you then have 30 long-running queries, nothing happens because you can't get more queries run at the same time. So it has some pitfalls. So what you can do in MariaDB, you can run it both at the same time. You have 2 ports. One port is for a thread pool, one port is for one thread by query, thread by connection, and you can mix those. So you can solve the problem in a better way than MySQL. So NoSQL, how many are using NoSQL here in some form? So Cassandra, MongoDB, okay, MariaDB, okay, yeah. Something else? What are you using?
We use Citrus Suite.
Sorry?
Citrus Suite.
Citrus. Okay. So I was actually meeting with Tangen this morning and talking about how can we get MongoDB into MariaDB, and let's see if we can get some customers interested in sponsoring us. So hopefully we will have that in a couple of months. The thing is that NoSQL has lots of good uses. The problem with NoSQL is it's very hard to export that to Excel or some other program that talks with ODBC. You can't always have to do programming just to get your reports done. So SQL is a very more expressive language for doing things ad hoc. And I believe that if we make MariaDB a hub between NoSQL and SQL, then we can make life easier for everybody. So that's why we started by working with Cassandra, just an experiment. Can we do this? Works very well. So now we are trying to work with all the big order sources and NoSQL vendors to try to provide an easy interface. So you can use the NoSQL interface for your main thing, but if you want to export a join or want to join a MariaDB with Cassandra, you can do that through MariaDB. And we also speed up things with how many has used the handler interface? That you do handler open, handler read, handler write. Okay. It's not that known, but it's a very easy way. If you want to have something that is close to NoSQL speed within MariaDB or MySQL, you can use that to just do basically key value access. We also added handler socket. Anybody using handler socket here? And some 2 years ago it was very popular. I got lots of blogs. They had it compiled in MariaDB. Some people are using that. And dynamic columns is something I implemented 2 years ago, and that allows you to have on each row a different set of columns than on the other rows. So you can basically get the same kind of dynamic row handling that people are using NoSQL for. Anybody using dynamic columns here? 1 minute. But then you should actually look at it. Trivial interface, 6 functions you have to learn. You will learn that in 30 seconds how to use it, and you can do things in SQL that you didn't think was possible. It solves the problem that you never have to do an alter table. We added Cassandra, and we are working on MariaDB, and hopefully we will have soon MariaDB, just because there's so many people who are using MariaDB and telling us it will be nice to have. So one of the questions 1 year ago for most of the people was, why are we calling it 10.0 and not 5.6? And the problem is that we did a full merge with MySQL 5.5 to MariaDB 5.3. That took us 1 year to get it right. We don't want to spend 1 year to do the merge. And again, especially when we don't want a lot of the code in MySQL 5.6. There's lots of good code, there's also lots of horrible code, especially in replication that we really don't want to maintain because it's not maintainable. So we are basically rewriting that, and that will take us some time. But we still want to have it out release around August, September this year, with lots of features. So we decided to do this in 2 steps. So 10.0 will have all the important part of 5.6, better replication, parallel replication, all the things with optimizer and more than MySQL 5.6 has maybe not all the small, some of the small features. We'll add that in 10.1, so 10.1 will be a drop-in replacement on MySQL 5.6 again. You will be able to drop in 10.0 also for 5.6, but it may be that some optimization in 5.6 doesn't do anything. But it's still all on data on disk and all the protocols will be the same.
Question.
Yep.
When you are planning on releasing 10 and 10.1?
So we should have the beta of 10.1 in August. That is the plan that we have promised some people who actually are sponsoring us for that. And 10.1 will be probably January, February.
Excuse me?
Yeah.
I don't understand why, if MariaDB is so good, which it sounds like, why you are still catering to MySQL. I know it's your baby, but I mean, why don't you just like...
The thing is that we want to make it easy for people who are using MySQL 5.6 and MySQL just to move. If they're not compatible, people will have been reluctant to try. Currently, it's
But you're doing a favor to Larry Ellison, who does not need any favors.
No, actually, the thing is that I like to make people happy. And there's lots of people, even here, who has been relying on the fact that we make MySQL open source, you can trust us, you can trust me, that we will continue maintaining that. I can't fulfill that promise with Oracle handling the code. But I can fulfill that promise with MariaDB, and I can also do that when you switch to MariaDB, it will be easy like that.
Do you understand what I'm saying? You could just go so much higher.
We are. The thing is that all the features that we have in 10 here, they are all new. MySQL has nothing like that. They are adding constantly new features. But we do get a lot of things cheaply from 5.6. Why shouldn't we really do that? So anything that is trivial is good. We take things that are bad, we recode if they are a usable thing. Parallel replication is a really reusable thing. That's the thing that people told me for 10 years that we need this. We need to have the slave faster than the master. MySQL has no plans to do that. We should be able to deliver that this year. And that's why we are recoding the replication, just because MySQL replication is not good enough. In the DB, on the other hand, that's state of the art. That team is the best working team at Oracle, and they take in everything they do. You get that for free. So what we do, the thing is that we are always 10 years ahead because we can take anything from Oracle, they can take anything from us. They don't want to have anything in GPL. They even don't really want to accept our patches. So we do get the benefit of what they do. They don't get benefit from us, so why not? I mean, it's work to do that, but it's still fast to do the merges and get some of the bug fixes in, even if you have to fix some of that, than fixing everything else. And if Oracle ever at some day would come to the senses and say that, okay, let's make MySQL BSD and have a community to work with us, we will probably strive to work with them and create one repository with everybody to work with. I would love that. I don't think that will happen. I'm not planning that for that to happen. But if that happens, I'm the one who will want to work with them. But taking things to me for free, of course I take it. Yes. And the same thing, I want to help everybody here. Currently, if you have MySQL 5.5 to 5.6, it's basically 30 seconds of work, depending on how quickly you type. Uninstall. And it works. So you have a question.
Do you want to support MariaDB and
So the development with the open source project works in that. So I have put some 4 million euros of my own money into saving MySQL under the name of MariaDB. And with that, I was able to establish a team, have it working long enough until we started to actually get money. So now we are self-sufficient. We did join with MySQL some months ago. So now we have a team of 70 people, and now we can run without myself. So kind of that part is solved. Sorry, do I have another question? So the thing is that when you have an open source project, you have there's lots of things that is problematic, and the biggest part is that we were 20 people. We were doing a project. We were successful. We got it in distributions. We have some millions of users, and we were trying to get paid by doing new features and doing third level support in different companies. We didn't want to do first level because we didn't want to compete with us. The problem is that we did find during these 4 years that this is something that most open source projects face today, is that a service is enough. A service alone, you can't earn enough money for your team. And it took, even with successful projects like MariaDB, even if I have the know-how and the credits of MySQL behind me, I couldn't get it profitable until after 4 years. And the reason is that when you're 20 people and you want to do a project, about half of your money goes to just work with the community, fixing bugs, doing releases, reviewing patches, getting the patches in, and nobody was prepared to pay for that. And with a service company, you get about 30% profit, but if 50% of your manpower goes to the open source, you don't make a living. So we did fix that by creating the MariaDB Foundation. And without that, we couldn't have continued doing like we did. Without getting investors and pumping up money, but I didn't want to have even a chance that we would need to do a fork again. So the MariaDB Foundation was created to ensure that MariaDB will continue to strive whatever happened to the new company SkySQL, where MariaDB is part of. But still the foundation is to continue. And the money that you get to the foundation helps us work in the community. So, and it's kind of funny because in practice what the program was doing, non-profit work, the work in the community and everything, but nobody's prepared to donate money to the company. Even if the company is not owned by any investors, we're not trying to make money, we're just trying to pay something. But anyway, the good news with MariaDB is that there's lots of people involved, there's lots of activity, and this slide basically shows that what's been happening just the last couple of months. We have probably 1 million users, but now us getting into distributions, we should be about 5 million users by the end of this year. And there were predictions by the 451 group about how the future will look like. So at 2001, the 451 group did a survey about the use of databases. You can probably read this, but this is MySQL, SQL Server, Postgres, Oracle, MongoDB, MariaDB, DB2, Cassandra, Redis. I don't know. We don't have DB2 here, but DB2 is somewhat used, but I don't really see it myself. But anyway, 80% of the web uses MySQL in 2011. And this was actually not only web companies, but big database users. And at the same survey, they had actually a survey in 2009, the same, and there were predictions that how things would look in the future. Here was how MySQL looks in 2009, and they predicted in 2011 and 2014, and they did a new survey in 2012, where you have MariaDB in green, and you can see that things are actually going up in percent of usage. But the interesting thing is that even if the percent of usage is about the same, database usage has gone up 10x since then. And MySQL is kind of still very strong. So this just shows that even if NoSQL is very much used, MySQL still have a place in the long future. And my job is to ensure that at 2017 that things should be totally green. It was interesting at Percona conference, the 451 group has done just 2 months ago a new survey. I haven't had time to add it here. But according to them, 2015, 50% of the people will use MariaDB. So things are looking good for us. And the reason for us getting suddenly used was actually MariaDB Foundation. And us announcing that we were working, then we actually were working with Wikipedia for that. So if you're looking at on the web statistics of MariaDB name uses and how much popularity is increasing, lots of things happened in 2012, which is not that long ago in December, and Wikipedia announced that they're switching to MariaDB. First they moved to the English version, and the interesting thing with Wikipedia was that they were using 5.0, a patch 5.0 where they had lots of patches from Facebook, the people from Facebook maintaining it and optimizing it to be perfect for Wikipedia use. Not for any other use, but just for Wikipedia use. So then they took a stock MariaDB 5.5 and tested it and noticed it was faster, it was 10% faster. So they were very happy with it. They first moved to the English version, and now they are in the process of moving everything else. And in January, the big thing was that Fedora voted that we would replace MariaDB, MySQL with MariaDB. OpenSUSE announced at the same time they would do the same, followed by Slackware, Chakra, Arch Linux, and some others. And now all the distributions except, or the big ones except Debian and Ubuntu has basically MariaDB not only included by default. And that means that things are using MariaDB will be totally different by the end of the year. Not everybody is upgrading, but everybody upgrading they just get replaced with MariaDB. Google is depending on MariaDB. Fusion.io is working close with us, and they even published a benchmark that they show how much speed up they have got with MariaDB. So we're working very closely with them to make MariaDB better than Fusion.io. How many use Fusion.io there? Yes. So if you are using MariaDB, you will basically get atomic bytes and give you some 10-15% speed up, and we're working on some new stuff should be published after 1 month that will give you even bigger benefits of Fusion. And this just shows that even if NoSQL has lots of money and the people are talking about that for the foreseeable future, still MySQL system is much bigger, so still safe to bet on MySQL. So when we started with MariaDB, we got lots of questions about from people who were embedding MySQL in different appliances, and they were asking, so can we use MariaDB for free? And the biggest hurdle for that, using that, was that all the drivers for MySQL was in GPL, and that actually stopped them from coming out from the MySQL licensing. So we created recommendation basically LGPL libraries for C and Java.
What is LGPL?
Sorry? LGPL. It basically means that you can use it and include it with your software, and your software doesn't become GPL. The only thing that you have to take care of, if you do changes in the LGPL code, you have to publish those. You don't have to publish your application. But with GPL, you have to publish your application if you're linked to it. So that was the way we did dual license in MySQL, saying that if you use MySQL, that's fine, but if you combine MySQL with your closed source code, then you have to buy the same code under a commercial license, so you don't have to do your code open source. And that was something that me and David Axelmark invented. And we were the first one to do dual license GPL. But the problem is that we had always the idea that MySQL should be lightweight, it should be very, very inexpensive for people to embed it, because the problem, we saw that the prices for embedded databases was totally wrong. But now Oracle has, for some customers, they have increased the price of licenses tenfold, actually made MySQL more expensive to embed than Oracle. And something needs to be done. So I created a dual licensing, I can break it. And you can use the LGPL libraries with MariaDB, Percona Server, MySQL, Bristol, works with everything. And we're working with some customers on ODBC LGPL version. And if you're using Perl or PHP, you already have a free driver, so you don't have to pay licenses if you do things right. And we also work with Compatibility to produce a native version of MariaDB. We wanted to have it in 30A, but we did find some issues while doing testing last week, so we did a release without Compatibility. We should have a Compatibility release within a week or so. The Connect storage engine is something that's really, really interesting, and the people who have tried that are usually extremely enthusiastic because suddenly you can do things that you couldn't do before. It's an engine who makes it trivially to adopt new formats on disk and manipulate those. So by using the Project engine, you can read text files, CSV files, DBase formats, XML, and actually update them from MariaDB. It also supports RDBC. So if you have a legacy database, for example Oracle, you can actually join Oracle tables with MySQL tables. And we actually know one person that I met in London last week who were using this to join Oracle with Postgres, using MariaDB in the middle. And so now I'm working in the MariaDB Foundation as a CTO, and the foundation was created to ensure that MariaDB, whatever happens with the owner of with SkySQL in the future, MariaDB is guaranteed to be free. You never have to do a fork. The foundation has enough rights to trademark to ensure that we never have what happened to MySQL can never happen again. And the foundation has taken over the role of working with the community. All reviews from developers who want to code in MariaDB. Foundation is the one who does the reviews, works the community, and then the person developer to get the code in, even helps adopt it, and also even do specification of how the code should look. And also does the builds, the QA and stuff. And that's why we need donations to the foundation to be able to try to open source part of the project. SkySQL, on the other hand, works by if somebody wants to have a feature, all the best engineers are now working on SkySQL, so you can get them to do any feature. Like, for example, some people here would like to be part of sponsoring a MongoDB storage engine. SkySQL will do that work. The foundation can do project work because we are non-profit. So we can only work with the community, and you can't pay us to do something. You can only something specific. You can only pay us to help us drive the project forward. And we have a couple of big sponsors, but we still need more to be able to hire more people. We are 3 developers and 1 documentation writer, and the board in the foundation. And about 80% of all the money we get goes to pure development. We also do merging in MySQL. So we're looking for sponsors. We have Simon Phipps as the CEO, and the CTO. And Simon Phipps, if somebody knows, he was the one who was driving the open source environment within Sun. So I didn't let him know. So the conclusions is basically that the 30 years ahead of MySQL, they're maintained by the same people who use MySQL, who knows MySQL the best. If you trust the MySQL code, you should trust the MariaDB code more because you know what we are doing, binary compatible. And currently, if you look at MySQL 5.5 compared to MariaDB 5.5, there's not a single reason at all to use MySQL 5.5 compared to MariaDB. And if you have questions, I'm happy to take those. And if somebody wants to have black vodka, we should hopefully have enough for everyone.
Before we move on to Q&A first, that was a great big thank you. Monty Widenius, thank you again. That's good news. We have to give away tonight a Nexus 7, Samsung Nexus 7. Just curious, anybody in the audience have a Nexus 7? Do you mind? Yeah, perfect. Do you mind coming up here and just showing it? No. Some people think they're not winning yours. We'll give yours back. They just don't have what we're giving away. So you will win a brand new Nexus 7. How do we turn it on? I'm holding it upside down, that helps better, right? Okay, you will win a brand new Nexus 7, not his, I assure you. There is a green container floating around, being passed around. Just throw your card in there. We will raffle it off at the end of the Q&A. So that's the first thing. And we also have these amazing candies. Are they called candies? Candies that lets you make your own black vodka. Just throw these in a jar, in a container of regular vodka. We have 3 bags of them. Whoever checks into GoChat on databaselove.com, we're just going to pull 3 random names out of there, or maybe the first 3 duels come up to get them. We'll do it that way. Non-diplomatic. So go to databaselove.com, check in. The Wi-Fi password is actually at the moment on the screen, AN234 guest. Oh yeah, black vodka shots will be given out to everybody for as many as we have at the end of our Q&A as well. So, questions? Questions? Oh, well, what was that?
Yeah, you have a question, by the way.
Okay, we'll do that one right after this one.
Yes, I was wondering if you could address migration issues. So say I've got a bunch of MySQL databases and I want to move them to Maria.
Which version?
I think I'm 5.1.
If you have 5.1, if you go to MariaDB 5.1, it's like that. If you go to 5.5, it's basically little less work than if you go to MySQL 5.5. Because we are a little more compatible with MySQL and MySQL itself.
What do you mean like that? What do you mean like that?
What I mean is you don't need to do any changes in any client code. You can either use the old connectors from MySQL, you can use the MariaDB connectors, both work. The data on disk is the same, the protocol is the same, the APA and the APA are the same. All the file names are the same, all the sockets are the same.
Oh, I see. So all the data, actual data file.
And that's actually the problem, is that why we are hard to getting into Fedora, because we are a replacement. We are not a package that you can run at the same time because we're using the same board. Fedora, sorry, not the Fedora, but the Debian people didn't like that. They said that you should be able to run them at the same time. Then the problem is that if you then have MySQL, you deinstall MySQL, put in MariaDB, then all your data is gone. Most people will not like that. Some people get upset, and we don't want to do that. We want to do that you can have either one.
Thank you.
Okay,
And if you go to Google, there's 2 pages that you should read if you are considering MariaDB. Do in Google MariaDB versus MySQL. You'll find on the top 2 pages features and compatibility. Compatibility page tells you all the things that are different, because we have fixed a couple of bugs. And if you're depending on your bugs, then you have a problem. But we have tried to list everything that is different there, and the page is not long. And in practice, everything works. And then do the feature page that tells in detail all the features, all the benefits you get. Typically, the speed up. Assuming you have simple queries, you typically get 5 times speed up on a master, 10% on the slaves. For some queries, you can get 100 times speed up, but that's depending if the query is complex. If you use sub-queries, it's infinitely faster.
we've got some great questions up on GoChat right now. First is the easy one. Is MariaDB considered NoSQL?
No, because NoSQL may be, because the NoSQL just means it's a new version of SQL. And it's a better version of MySQL, so in that sense, yes. I would say that what's different with MariaDB compared to the older ones, we actually can work with NoSQL. In that case, I would call it that, we call it NoSQL. But it's MariaDB is easy to say.
And the second half of that person's question is, what's your thoughts on Jim Starkey's NoSQL product?
I mean, Jim Starkey is, I worked with him myself. He was the one who did the Falcon engine that he never got to work, and he has had higher claims about the Falcon engine at one time that he has about NewDB, NoDB, and now, and he didn't get one to work. I don't know if he can get whatever. But I mean, he promises a lot, and if he delivers, it will be interesting, but he didn't succeed before. Last time, but he actually got lots of money from me for doing it.
Oh, okay. Interesting question. Yes, right there.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if you're developing a plugin for Qt, the Qt framework. We're working with them to develop that. Qt. So it's a software development platform.
Yeah, but that's for Qt is for front end.
Yeah, but they have plugins to MySQL. They have other databases.
They haven't approached us for doing any work. So if we are very open to work with anybody, and we are trying to be compatible, and we are trying to do more. So we have some progress reports that some of the new frameworks are using. That if you do out that table or load that info, you get in the client 10% done, 20% done, 30% done. And that you have to do changes to the framework to be able to handle. And we are working with some of those to get those changes in, but not with Qt at this moment. Just because they haven't contacted us. We are just 20 people, so people have to contact us for getting attention.
Yes.
MariaDB and Galera, is there a free product or
It's totally free.
Okay.
What part of Percona's database is part of MariaDB? How do they interact? Percona versus
So we have XDB there, performance version of InnoDB. We have that as default InnoDB in MariaDB. We have taken some of the patches, improved those, and added those to MariaDB. So basically, I would say that at this time, we have almost all of the Percona patches in a beta version in MariaDB. They have taken some patches from us. So, but the big difference with Percona and MariaDB is that Percona is totally dependent on Oracle for all the development. They only do some minor patches that customers ask them. They don't have a development team. They have no intention to do a fork. What we are doing everything we can to save the future of MySQL. We are not depending on Oracle. We do take from them what we get for free, what we like. If you don't like it, you do it.
All the way there back.
Why did you decide to integrate Spring search engine with MariaDB?
So we have things already.
Why did you decide to integrate Spring search engine with MariaDB?
Why didn't we use Sphinx? I mean, Sphinx, it works pretty good, and they have worked hard to make a storage engine. We took that actually and fixed a lot of issues with it and added that. Because it's a feature people can use if they want to. And I don't see a much better choice. There is the Japanese storage engine that also can do searches, starting with M. Madula. I don't remember his name for this second, but we are also planning to add them in the core of MariaDB. I mean, so our job is to work with the community. If somebody wants to do a storage engine that can do search, and they promise to maintain that, we are happy to add it in. So the rules for adding code to MariaDB is that, and this is something we are sharing with everybody that's doing commit access. If you add code, you have two choices. You have to promise to maintain that, or then be in that SkySQL is maintaining it. And I don't want to have any code in MariaDB that is not maintained by somebody. We have the best possible team, so if you like the code, we'll take it and maintain it. Even if you would stop doing it. And as long as some person come with us and promise that here's a code that does this great search thing and we will maintain that, then we will add it for you. As long as it doesn't destroy some functionality that we would need now or in the future. Yes.
I have a bunch of installations that I've upgraded to MySQL 5.5,
yeah.
But I still use the MySQL tables because I didn't see the need to change to MariaDB because they just default engine. If I now upgrade to MariaDB 10 and later change to MariaDB 10, should I also consider changing storage?
I mean, DB has it uses MySQL, it uses. It depends. One benefit you get immediately is that things will be 5 times faster when you select for your MySQL tables. If you need a crash safety, you have either a in a DB or token that you can choose. The nice thing with MariaDB, you can just do a test installation, choose it, put it in a slave. You can have different engines on the master and on the slave, and then you choose the one that fits your profile the best. Yeah. But the main thing is that when you upgrade to MariaDB, you don't have to do anything. In this case, MySQL gets instant speed up. The same thing if you do upgrading to 5.5, extra DB is so much better. So people usually get, compared to MySQL 5.5, some 50% speed up also.
Next question? Yeah?
So what does Oracle have to say about MariaDB?
If you go and look at the MySQL documentation, you will get a very precise answer that you don't exist. But if you're looking at what they are trying to tell their customers, they are basically trying to say them that they can't depend on us because we don't have a big infrastructure that Oracle has. Of course, that was the same thing they told us, me, 5 years ago, 7 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. So things hasn't changed.
Yes.
I still do a lot of really small freelance projects where people want to have their own hosting accounts and shared servers. Are the bigger shared server offering instead of MySQL starting to offer MariaDB?
Amazon has said that if somebody comes to them and asks for, ask for MariaDB, you can get MariaDB instances now. And I'm pretty sure that thanks to us now being in distributions, that basically means that we will be default. It also means that the hosting providers have to follow what is default. So it's easier now than just a couple of months ago.
Yes.
And we do have a list in the knowledge base of our hosting providers. So if you find somebody who supports MariaDB, you can actually tell them to add themselves to the knowledge base, then they do documentation, in which case they get more customers just because they support to get a little bit.
So fresh developers who are getting into our Android or Python start with SQLite. Do you have a recommendation to use MariaDB instead?
It depends. I mean, if you just want something on the device that SQLite already exists. I mean, SQLite is good as long as you don't have concurrent users. If you have a bigger database of concurrent users, then MariaDB and MySQL is about 10x faster easily. And the biggest speed up you get with SQLite is basically that, because you are linking the library together with your application, so you don't have the overhead of the socket, and that gives the biggest speed up. If you use the embedded library with MySQL or MariaDB, you actually get even faster than SQLite. But normally you don't do that if you are closed source. And then that is kind of a benefit for SQLite. But if you have two users using the same database, there's no reason to not use MariaDB and MySQL. We're actually talking with some of the global vendors to get MariaDB into devices, and I mean, then we're probably using the area storage engine, because what we can do with area that you can do this easily SQLite is that, because it's like my eyes and with this crash save. And it's very easy to copy those from the device to any computer, because it's portable and it's safe. So we can do synchronization from devices to your main computers much easier with rsync or anything else. And we can do that per tables. And SQLite can do that. So that will be a benefit in the future. And the other thing that we are doing is that we have the LGPL library that connects to MariaDB or MySQL. We should have very soon a version that you can also connect to SQLite. So that means that you can use your client, and if you use the MySQL library, you can then use either MySQL or SQLite depending on what you want or the licensing need you have. And we will also probably very soon do a SQLite library that you can connect to MariaDB. So if you have an application who is going for SQLite, just strap the library and then you can use MariaDB instead, so you don't have to change the application. to work with that.
Well, time for just a few more questions. Yes?
Just one question. You said that you used the same ports, right? Like, let's say 3306 is the same, right? So,
Yeah.
okay. So you couldn't run them at the same time, but if you had a server with multiple IP addresses, you could
Of course you can
install
do
and run them simultaneously.
Yeah, of course you can, like with MySQL, you can have any number of instances running on the same machine. I'm just saying that by default installations, all options are the same.
Right.
Of course, we have lots of more options, but your config files will work with MariaDB as they work with MySQL. Everything else is the same. And that's why we like call it the true drop-in replacement.
To extend your question, someone wrote something in GoChat just asking if the MySQL native client is supported for high performance.
A native client? Where do you see that? I didn't.
The end of the client there. End of the big paragraph.
Does MariaDB support MySQL native client X4i?
I think maybe he means the for PHP, MySQL, and
All clients work identically because we're using the same protocol. So you can use either the MySQL client or the MariaDB client if you whatever you want. We have some features in the client, in our clients that MySQL doesn't have, that you don't get if you don't use them. So we can do both synchron and asynchron I/O. We have the progress reports. We have some bug fixes and stuff. But you can use everything the same. So the answer is yes. I mean, it can't be a drop-in replacement. You can't replace it like that if not everything works. So we have a couple of MariaDB users here. Have you had any problem when you use MariaDB? Any? Okay?
Okay, last question. Yes, you're on the poll.
I could also ask how much improvements do you get when switching? Or did you switch or there was a new project?
We switched. The main thing we've seen is a lot more stability with MariaDB. And as far as query performance, we've seen improvement or at least no worse. So we're definitely better off.
Okay? Okay. I'm not paying him.
Onward to the Nexus 7 giveaway. Everybody who wants to put a card in got a chance to put a card in? Yes? Good. Grab a card out. Mix them up first and grab a card out. Not that one. Throw that one back in. That's-
Why put my card in though?
It's okay. You go in. Just don't look.
About stability, we have worked with SkySQL for 3 years.
That's
and we
not
have
Alexander
a lot of...
Ginsburg.
Alexander Ginsburg, you win a brand new Nexus 7. Nexus 7 is courtesy of SkySQL. Please see Jamie right here, and she will arrange for your address. You get it? We do have Black Vodka up here. Monty will be available for one-on-one questions now. Thank you very much, Monty. We'll be here.